Alongside their brand spanking new models, the gorgeously updated Terminators are getting a brand new datasheet in 10th edition to go along with it. And there is a lot to talk about here, so let's not waste any time and dive right in. In the brilliant new 10th edition datasheets, which I have to say are so unbelievably lovely to look at, they are just so clear and concise and clean and easy to understand. I think this is one of the biggest and best changes to 10th edition that seems to be coming. I love everything about these new datasheets. I think they are fantastic. But on the subject of the Terminators themselves, as you can see, they still have their 5-inch move as they do now, but straight off the bat we have a pretty significant change with a brand new Toughness 5 stat instead of Toughness 4. So straight away, these new Terminators are going to be a lot more durable against enemy like firepower, and this straight off is one of the biggest boosts to their profile that I think they could have made in terms of getting Terminators to be more resilient on the battlefield. As I'm sure many Custodies and Death Guard players will tell you, the move from T4 to T5 is a pretty significant one. They still have their 2-up save and 3 wounds, and they are rocking the same 6-up leadership which the Intercessors have, which makes them pretty good at passing their battle shock tests and being able to remain at full sort of efficiency, benefiting from stratagems and other abilities all game long. And then finally, as we may have expected, their OC, unlike the Intercessors, is 1, so they aren't as good at taking and holding objectives, which is what you would expect. They will still need the support of your troops options like Tactical Marines and Incursors and Intercessors to do the objective holding, while these guys basically just go and, destroy the enemy or just hold other key areas and just won't die. Overall, I think this is a super solid stat line from what we've seen. For 10th edition, they've got a great boost to their toughness to help them stick around a bit longer, and they are going to be very solid staples on the battlefield. But that stat line isn't all that has changed for them. To help even more on top of the Toughness 5, in addition to their 2-up save, they are now supported by a base 4-up Invulnerable save instead of a 5-up. So not only are they better against weaker light anti-infantry firepower, now even against high AP weaponry, things like las cannons and missiles and plasma, they are going to be a hell of a lot more durable with a 4-up save instead of a 5-up against those attacks. So these two changes alone, I think, will make Terminators feel like the proper lore immovable tanks that they are meant to be. And then on top of the changes to their durability, we also got to see some new rules and also some weapon changes that are coming in 10th edition. On the ranged weapon front, there are quite a lot of things that have stayed the same. By the looks of it, the basic stats of a lot of the weapons do look to be largely similar. We have 6-shot assault cannons, we have D6 damage crack missiles, we have strength for storm bolters, everything we know from 9th edition. But there are some big changes to take note of. Some new weapon rules appear, devastating wounds on the assault cannon. We don't know what that does yet, but maybe extra wounds, maybe extra AP on 6s to hit or something like that. Blast still seems to be a thing on the frag missiles. Flamers are now finally getting ignore cover, and as we can see on the heavy flamer, they also have the torrent special rule, which way back in 7th edition essentially let you start the flamer template from like 8 inches away. It just gave you an extra bit of range, so it will be interesting to see if torrent does a similar thing in 10th edition. Crack missiles also did get a profile change, going from strength 8 to strength 9, so they are much better now against those sort of slightly tougher vehicles that currently sit around toughness 8. Obviously things are likely to change in 10th. They have said they are going to be going above the sort of quote unquote 10 limit for toughness, so I expect things like knights will go up above 8, probably even above 9 anyway, so this may not make a huge difference for them, but certainly going into maybe things like Predators or Lehman Russes, that sort of thing, the move to strength 9 instead of strength 8 should be a fairly nice one to have. But I think what the biggest change from what we've seen in this preview is the change to rapid fire. Now, Stormbolters are still rapid fire 2, so there is 2 base shots from the Stormbolter as you can see on the profile, and what rapid fire does now is that it adds shots to that base profile based on what the amount is. So rapid fire 2 adds 2 shots when you're in half range. So for Stormbolters, this is still the same as it is now. They will still be 2 shots normally, 4 shots when they are within half range. But the fact that it doesn't just double shots now, the fact that it is on a specific number means again that GW can use these data sheets to simplify things or add in more complexity to weapons. They could make a bolter, rapid fire 1, so that it's 1 shot normally and 1 shot in half range for 2 like it is now, or they could make it rapid fire 2 so that it's 1 shot normally or 3 shots in half range. Equally, maybe instead of getting DACA on the Orc guns, they will just use the rapid fire rule and make it so that Orc shooters are, maybe 2 shots normally, but rapid fire 3 or rapid fire 4 when they're in half range, to show that as the Orcs get closer, they start just shooting more wildly and more inaccurately, but just with a huge amount of DACA to go into the enemy. So the fact that these rules are now sort of like keyed on values rather than just being a set rule allows GW to be a lot more, they can be a lot more sort of complex with them if they want to be, and add in more variation rather than just every rapid fire gun essentially being the same, and GW have to worry about, is a pulse rifle with rapid fire going to be too powerful? Should we make it assault? Whereas a bolter with rapid fire, is that a bit underwhelming? Do we need to give it an extra rule? They can just alter the rapid fire value and balance weapons that way. I think it's a really interesting change, and it's going to make balancing guns much more exciting and much more fun. Another thing to note on the weapons is it seems like the keywords like heavy and assault are gone from the weapon types, so it seems likely that there won't be any big rulebook wide weapon types anymore. I don't think there will be heavy weapons or assault weapons or DACA weapons or rapid fire weapons. It will all just be done in the weapon profile itself, like we see with the rapid fire. Consequently, it means that things like the -1 to hit for infantry with heavy weapons is probably gone. Again, they don't need it to be a rule in the rulebook anymore, because they can just put it into the weapon datasheet. So for example, a Space Marine Devastator squad with a las cannon, that las cannon will probably be 4s to hit, whereas a las cannon on a Predator, that will probably be 3s to hit. They don't need to add a rule that changes things based on unit to unit, because they can just change it in the unit itself to show that variation and show that distinction, even though the weapons are technically the exact same. On the melee weapon front, we also see another brand new rule. This is the anti-X rule, in this case anti-vehicle. And this is essentially what poison is in current 40k. It means that an attack with this rule will auto wound on a given number despite the enemy toughness. So for the Change Fist, as you can see, it is anti-vehicle 3+, so it will always wound units with the vehicle keyword on a 3+, even if it is toughness 10 or toughness 12 or toughness 1000. It doesn't matter, it will always wound on a 3+. To counter that sort of powerful rule it has, it now hits on a 4+. Unlike the Power Fist, which is now decidedly less unwieldy, which is now a flat 3 to hit. So again, you don't need to have rules saying things like Power Fists or Chain Fists have a -1 to hit, because it can all be done in the profile. The Power Fists, they hit on 3s. Chain Fists, they don't have -1 to hit, they just hit on 4s now. So it allows you to balance various weapons against each other so much more efficiently, and I really do like it. And like I said yesterday in the Intercessor video, Power Fists aren't strength ×2 anymore. They're just strength 8 on a Terminator. So I imagine when we see the stat for a Power Fist for, say, an Astra Militarum Sergeant or Captain or whatever it may be, it will probably be Weapon Skill 4+, and it will be Strength 6. So there's no need to actually look at the unit stat line and work out what things are going to be, because you can just look at the weapon and it's all there for you. You know exactly what you need to hit, you know exactly what your strength is, so you know what you need to wound. It just makes things so much more simple and easy to just quickly look at and understand. And I think that's the big takeaway for these new datasheets. They're going to make the game so much easier to just get into. Even if it's a new army, it will be so easy to see what you need to hit and to wound, and just get into the game that much more quickly. On top of that, power weapons seem to have been consolidated. Now, whether you have a power sword or a power axe or a power maul, whatever it may be, you will just be using the power weapon profile. I know some people may not like this, but I do quite appreciate it from a simplification standpoint. So you will now just be hitting on 3s at strength 5, minus 2 AP, 1 damage. It means that it doesn't matter whether your stuff is modeled with axes or swords or mauls. You can just do what looks cool, and it will not really make an impact if you're trying to be the most competitive sort of build for a unit. So I like that. Again, I know some people might not, but personally I think that's a pretty good change. We also got shown a few of the unique rules for Terminators. As you can see, they have 2 abilities. They have core abilities and faction abilities, and the article does say that most data sheets, if not all, will have a few abilities to go along with them. Quite often they are things that were stratagems before that have now been baked into the profile. So I would expect things like rhinos to have some kind of smoke screen ability, maybe as their core ability, which again just saves space, cuts down on stratagems, and gives that fluff and identity and uniqueness back to the unit itself. So I really do like that. For Terminators, we have their Fury of the First ability, which keys in with their Oath of Moment faction ability. Fury of the First means that each time a model makes an attack, you can ignore any weapon or ballistic skill modifiers, so you will always be hitting with your Stormbolter and your Power Fist on 3s, no matter what sort of negative buffs you may or debuffs you may have on you. And then on top of that, there is the Oath of Moment part of the rule, which is something that is apparently a Space Marine faction ability. We don't know what it does yet, but this is apparently the Space Marine faction tactic or ability, whatever you want to call it. And when your Terminators are targeted with this ability, whatever it may do, they also get +1 to hit. So that means your Terminators can now be hitting with Power Fists on 2s, which is really quite exciting. The final thing we get to see is the other ability, the Teleport Homer. This has changed. You can still deep strike anywhere in your movement phase, I think, from what I'm understanding, but the Teleport Homer itself is sort of an ability that has changed. You now put the Homer down at the start of the battle, so you can't use it to just deep strike anywhere now. It almost has to be declared before the battle begins, so potentially if you were hoping to use the Teleport Homer as part of your strategy, your opponent could zone you out or move away from it or just surround it in body so that you can't deep strike there to neuter the effectiveness of it. But if you do use the Teleport Homer, you can use the Rapid Ingress stratagem for 0 CP. And this is one of the new core stratagems to the game that's being introduced that again help consolidate things down and just put a few flavorful, characterful rules that units can use in the main books without having to have, 3 pages or 4 pages of faction stratagems taking up way too much space. So what the Rapid Ingress stratagem does is that you use it at the end of an enemy movement phase and you can deep strike. So your Terminators can now potentially come in around that Teleport Homer during an enemy's turn. So you can use this to completely mess up your enemy's plans, maybe block some charge lanes if they were hoping to get a charge off, or just, put the fear of the Emperor into a backline unit as a unit of 5 or 10 Terminators appears right next to them, essentially. It's a super fun, super thematic stratagem, and I think it's going to be something that a lot of players are going to be testing out and taking advantage of with their fancy new Terminators. Overall, everything that we've seen today for the Terminators I think is super fun. There are some genuinely brilliant design choices coming from GW, I think, in 10th edition, in terms of how things are laid out and presented, so they are easy to read, quick to find, and in all likelihood, much more straightforward to balance for them. It also seems like they are adding a lot of fluff and a flavour back to the actual unit entries, rather than leaving it all in the stratagem section of a book. So I really love this Terminator profile. It alone has made me so excited to see what the rest of 10th edition brings. And as a Dark Angel player, the idea of some of these rules and abilities and stat lines being on my Deathwing Terminators is making me just want to play 10th edition more than ever. I am so excited to try out a Terminator heavy list with some of these changes and abilities and special rules that they seem to be able to take advantage of now. But that's going to be it for this video. What do you think of these changes? Do you like the new Terminator stat line? And what do you think of the new rules like anti-vehicle 3 for the Chain Fist? And what do you think the devastating wounds rule will be for the assault cannon? Let me know down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later guys.